So in this video, we're looking at another really common one, important across all of business studies, HR. Loads and loads in the new 2027 syllabus, but all pretty basic stuff. I'm not going to read it all through you. You can look at it, but I will try and cover it when we explain it. The stages we're going to be looking at in this video, we're going to look at recruiting and selecting employees, employment contracts and legal controls over employment issues, and then training. It's a lot to get through. As ever, I'm going to try and do it with a silly story or to explain it so that you understand it. You've always got your textbooks, you've always got the GPTs you can use alongside. This is about understanding what's going on. So let's get into it. Right, for this story, I've tried to connect it back with what you're familiar, which is school. So in my story, we're imagining that the headmaster of your school, or could be headmistress, is retiring. They worked long enough and they now need to leave the school and have a nice peaceful life. So in this story, I've called them Mr. Slater. Now that leaves the customers, the parents, you lot, the students with questions saying, well, who's coming in? Who's going to be the new headmaster or headmistress? The decision makers in the school, be it a board of governors or whoever else, has to decide this. They need to get someone new in to be the headmaster or the headmistress. So how do they go? We're going to look at that process and what decisions they've got to make along the way. First of all, we need to know the stages that go on in this. So very quickly, we're going to run through the stages of getting someone new into a position, into a job. You first have to, obviously, identify the vacancy, exactly what you looking for. Sounds obvious, but it's not always obvious. You think in your school, well, what teachers do we need? Maybe a headmistress, headmaster is pretty obvious, but do we need an extra geography teacher or do we need one less geography? So identify exactly the vacancy that's necessary. Who do we need to replace or create a job for? We then need to do a job analysis. So they look at the job and say exactly what is it that we're looking for. Is it a geography teacher who also teaches a bit of maths? Do we need them to work on Saturdays as well? So really look and know what you're looking for so you can get the right person to fit it. You're then going to have to write a job description, because you can't advertise a job. Hey, we want you to come along and do some stuff. That's not going to cut it. You want to say exactly, we want you to do X, Y, and Z. We expect this to be, we need you to work from 8 in the morning till 5 in the afternoon. You need to be very specific about that, because only a fool would be taking a job where they don't know what there is expected of them. You're then going to look at a person's specification. You're going to draw up exactly what are you looking for in the candidate. Not what have they got to do, but what sort of candidate? What skills? Do you want them to speak French? Do you want them to speak Russian? Do you want them to have a degree in maths? Do you want to have a PhD in educational psychology? So what are you looking for? Do you want them to be ambitious? Do you want them to be fierce? All of those you could start thinking about in the person's specification. Lively, all of those. What sort of person are you looking for? Then you need to advertise the job. Now, I've put this in red. Are you going to advertise internally or externally? Are you going to expect to get the person from within the business or outside the business? I'm going to come back to this list of 10 in a moment, but let's just deal with that for a moment, internally or externally. So what does this mean? Well, in our story here, we've got that Mr. Slater is leaving, and we've got two options. Here's the first option. Think about this in your school, what would be best. Option one is you internally recruit the new headmaster. That means you get a member of staff who's already at the school. Now, it's unlikely you're going to get the person who's just a standard geography teacher and say, suddenly, hang on, you're jumping all the way up through the organizational structure. See in another video if you're not sure of that, and you're becoming the boss. It'd be more sensible that it would be a smaller jump. So in this, if we look at this school, we've got Mr. Fanning, who's already a deputy head, and we've got Miss Moore, who's already a deputy head. And then we've got an outside shot, Mrs. Wright, who's a head of year. But the obvious choice is between those two deputy heads. So you could think, yeah, they're the perfect people for the job. We're going to get those. Or you could recruit externally. We'll come to externally in a moment, but what's the advantage of getting someone internally? Well, it's quicker and it's cheaper actually, because you probably don't have to go through an external agency. You don't have to pay to put adverts out on the websites or in newspapers. You can just put it up in the notice board and then have a speak. So it's often quicker and cheaper. You already know the candidate. You know that they haven't got a drug problem, or that they don't have a bad temper, or they can handle pressure, those sorts of things. You can also say it motivates staff, because the staff you've got say, well, if I keep working hard, there's a chance for me to be right at the top in the most senior position with a high paid. The disadvantages, though, you're going to have limited new ideas. If you get those staff, they've perhaps been working in your school, they know how it runs, so they're just going to do more of the same. That might be good, but that could be a disadvantage if you really want to make your business competitive and new and have new ideas. You may cause resentment. Yes, okay, it's great that one of those has got the job. We chose one of the people from my previous slide, but the other person can't have it. And they're going to say, well, why did that one get it and not me? And that might demotivate the other people. So it could cause resentment in there. It also leaves a gap elsewhere. That when you push that deputy head up, well, then you're missing a deputy head, so you need to promote someone else along the chain, one of the teachers to deputy head, and then you need to recruit a new teacher down at the bottom. So it's not all perfect. The other disadvantage, if we think about this with this example, you're going to guarantee pretty much that you're going to be putting someone who's never been a headmaster or a headmistress. They haven't got experience in that because they've currently been working as a deputy head. So yes, you know them, but you're getting someone who hasn't done that specific job before. They've had experience of being a deputy, but not as a head teacher. So what's the alternative? Well, you go for external recruitment. You recruit by looking out into the whole world, not just someone who happens to already be working in your business. And you put an advert on a website, as you said, in a newspaper. We can use some other things we're going to come back to. But what's the advantage of getting that? Well, first of all, they're going to bring fresh ideas. That if you say, well, I'm looking for a head teacher, I don't have to look at the one in my country. I could be getting one from the other side of the world who's already been working for 12 years as a head teacher. They're going to bring new ideas, the way it worked in the other school, giving you a bit of a push, an edge perhaps. You've certainly got a larger pool of candidates. In that previous one, we had like 3 potentials. Now you could have hundreds or thousands, because you could have any head teacher from anywhere around the world. You're going to bring new skills to the business, and we know this person, you can get someone who's been a head teacher, maybe for 20 years. They've not done it at your school, but they're not like, oh, what's it like being a head teacher? They already have been doing the job. The disadvantage is more expensive, because you're going to have to recruit from further afield. You're going to have to maybe fly them over for interview, and you'll probably have to pay for that interview, that flight for them, and putting them up in a hotel. It's slower. You're going to go through a longer process because you don't know much about these people. We're going to just find out along the way. And the candidates are unknown. They could be very good at disguising faults if they've done a lot of interviews, and you've got limited time to find these faults. So let's go back to this list of 10. So we said internally, if we go to number 5 again, so let's say you wanted to go externally. We said we'd come back to it. It says in our 2027 syllabus, they specifically mention employment agencies. Well, these are groups that can do some of the work for you. If you don't want to just put a standard advert on a web page somewhere, you can go to these. So there might be a teacher recruitment agency, and you say, hey, we're looking for a headmaster. And they might already have good head teachers on that. And you could have a chat, and they say, well, look, we're already narrowed it down. There's these head teachers who are looking to move. I think you should look at these 10. So that can save you a bit of time. All of that, we've also got the word online recruitment, which is where a lot comes from. You can just go for traditional unemployment agencies, though. You wouldn't just do that you wouldn't really look at that for teaching. But a lot of it is moving online. Okay, what's next? So once you've decided, you're then going to be looking at receiving applications. You might put a form out there, and then you'd say, well, I want your CV or resume in America. And that's like a little advert for a person. You should be thinking about creating your own, even at your age, because it's what sells you. So a person about on a page of A4 or maybe 2 pages, they say, well, this is where I've worked, these are the grades I got at school, this is what I got in my IGCSEs. And they hand that, they post it or email it off to the business. Then, once they've got that, so for this school, let's say they were looking externally originally. Maybe they got 2,000 applicants. Well, they're gonna not interview 2,000 applicants, so they need to turn those 2,000 into a manageable number that maybe they can interview. Let's say a shortlist, they turn it down into 3, because 3 is still quite a lot if you've got to fly them over and bring them to your business and then spend a day talking to them, or maybe longer. So they take the big long list and turn it into a shorter list of 3 by looking at those resumes. That's why the resume, the CV, is so important. If your CV doesn't look good, no matter how good you are at the job, you don't ever make the shortlist, you end up in the bin pile. So really important. Then, once you've got your shortlist, you're then going to probably interview them, as I've been mentioning, or put them a test. You can maybe put other stages in along the way. You could start online with a Zoom interview. Then you could bring them in and get them to teach a lesson or deliver some professional development for the other teachers. There's no hard and fast rules. HR departments are being more creative, but they're essentially trying to find out, is this person a good fit? They're trying to put them under some trouble, make them a little bit uncomfortable, see how they handle pressure, because you are going to be working with this person. You're going to be giving them a contract and stuck with them. So you want to try and find out as much as you can. Once they've done all of that, they then select the best one based on all the evaluations, and then they make a job offer. If the candidate at that point might say, well, actually, I don't want it, okay, well, you've got to restart the process, go back, look at the other ones. But if they say, great, you've then got to issue the contract, we'll come back to it, and the candidate will look over it. If they're happy with it, both the employer and the employee, the new employee, will sign it, and that is then formal. Okay, lots in there. Selection methods, as we said, we were flying through them, but specifically mentioned in the syllabus there. So yes, CV resumes, I've mentioned, application forms. They might say, well, I want your CV, I always also want you to fill in this specific set of questions to see, because they want to get those 3,000 down to 3. They would then ask at some point, probably in the later stages, they might ask for references, very common, that those 3 people, often after interview, they say, well, I like this person, but let's find out what other people think. So they would go back to the previous employer, the school that the head teacher had been working, and they'd say, how is this person? And then the old people at the other school would say, yeah, they're pretty good, they're good at this, and they try and be honest, and then you say, well, yeah, you get a good reference, we're ready to, or they might say, actually, don't employ this person, we've not had a good experience, we really don't want them. And okay, well, that'd be interesting. So a little communication with their previous employer. Testing assessment centers, you could send them off to do a test somewhere else, get an external party rather than, if you didn't trust yourself, get some HR external specialist to do a test. And then the interviews we mentioned, sit them down. What are your strengths and your weaknesses? Common sort of questions. You can do some really fun role plays in the lessons. Okay, well, in my story, they went for internal and they decided to get Mrs. Moore, the former deputy head, to be the head mistress. Let's take it from there. So what does she need? Well, we said they need to have an employment contract that both the employer, the school, and Miss Moore needs to sign. Even though she's gone up, she's going to need a new contract. The old one's going to go. She's going to have this new one for being a head teacher. In there, it's going to have the duties and responsibilities. It's going to need to be very clear. You want her coming in on Saturday, it will need to say you need to come in on Saturday. You want her to be attending netball matches, you have to say attending netball matches, because if not, if you expect her later, she's going to say, you didn't tell me that. I didn't sign an agreement to do that, and I'm not going to do it. It's going to say the working hours. When do you expect me in school? Because you can't expect them in school if you haven't had a clear agreement that both of you have signed. You're going to say holiday entitlement. She's got to have a holiday. You might give her extra holiday. So it's got to be very clear. When do you get those holidays? And sick pay. What is the law, or what is the company policy about sick pay? None of those things individually can break the law of the country. You can go better than the law, you can be nicer than the law, but if they actually break the law, then it just makes the contract irrelevant, because you can't just say, I want you, you've got to come in and you've got to murder someone. You've signed it, you have to do it. No, of course you can't do that. So yes, they write the contract, it's agreed, but the law of the country always comes first. Now the benefits of having a contract, well, for the employers, It's got clarity. It's got legal protection that you can say to her, listen, you were meant to come in on Saturday for that netball match. I don't want to. Okay, well then we can rip up the contract and you owe us some money back perhaps. And you're not going to stay here anymore. So it gives nice clarity of position so we know where we're at. We know in advance as well, this is what we expect of you. Otherwise, you're going to get someone, you've wasted all that money, and then they're going to just be falling out. You don't want that. For the employees, for Miss Moore being this head teacher, well, it gives her job security. Really important. We mentioned that in Maslow. See the other section on motivation. But they can't, if she signs a permanent contract, different types, temporary, but if she signs a permanent contract, well, she's safe in that job. She's going to get paid every month with a salary, provided she doesn't break the rules and conditions of that contract. If she breaks the rules, then she's liable for dismissal. Again, see in a later video. But clear expectations. She knows what is expected of her, and she says, yeah, I can do that. Okay, on to the next section. Other legal controls we need to be aware of, or employers, the school would need to be aware of. I'm not going to run through, there's too much there. You can read it on the slide, you can look in the book. But unfair dismissal, just like we mentioned, what we can't do, now Miss Moore has got this job, they can't say to Mrs. Moore, you know what, after a year, I don't really like you, I didn't really like your face, see you later, you're gone. She's going to say, well, hang on, no, you can't do that. I've got a permanent contract, and I haven't broken any rules that we laid out in that contract. We both agreed I'd do this, 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 and this. I've done it, and therefore you cannot dismiss me. You can only dismiss me if I broke those rules, but if not, I am free to stay and get paid. The other one, you can read more about that on the resource I said, but the other one that we need to be aware of, discrimination. You'll have heard this term, hopefully, but it is completely illegal in most countries of the world to go against someone, discriminate against someone on the basis of age, gender, religion, disability, or sexual orientation. You cannot say you're not having the job because you're a woman. You're not having the job because you're gay. You're not allowed that. That is fundamentally illegal. You can't even say you're not getting promoted because of a disability. All of these people, it must be irrelevant to the recruitment and the promotion policy. Saying out loud you're not getting the job because you are of this religion is completely illegal, and the person on the receiving end can take that to court, and if they can prove it, they would win, and the employer would get fined. So companies need to be aware of that. You can't get away with those sorts of things. On to the next one, health and safety. The company has a responsibility to look after the welfare of the employees. And if you think about it, that's right. While I'm in my house, then yes, I'm responsible that the light doesn't electrocute me. But while I'm in school, if I go and press the light and the light electrocutes me, well, I'd be pretty cross with the employer because I didn't buy the light switch, I didn't put in the electrics. And if I find out that the business has been cutting costs and putting dodgy electrics in because they said, well, I don't really touch it, let's save some money. Well, I'm going to be really upset, and I have a right to be protected. So the employers, because businesses often want to maximize profit, and a good way to do that is reduce costs, the law has to make sure that they're not reducing costs on anything that is dangerous to me or to the employees. So health and safety is there. We also have to have legal minimum wage. You can't say, okay, well, this person's desperate, I know that they'll work, and we can just pay them 10 cents an hour. No, because that is exploiting people who are desperate. So each country will have a legal minimum wage. It might be 13 euros an hour or something like that, but the employer is not allowed. They can put it in the contract. We will pay you 10 euros an hour. Okay, you can put it, but it would be wrong. It would be illegal, and if it goes in front of a judge, they would lose. So employers need to be aware of those legal rules. The effect of those legal controls on the employer, well, you must comply with the law. It's a law. It's not an option. And this isn't about being ethical like in another section. This is the law. You have to do it as a business. If you don't do it, you will get fined. Therefore, to comply with these laws, it's probably going to increase the business's cost, depending on if they've been ethical. But if it's a business that's always been working as cheaply as possible and the law changes, well, their costs are going to increase. If it's a business that's already been really good with its employees, a change in the law perhaps wouldn't really matter. So we do that anyway. We don't pay 10 euros, we pay 100 euros an hour, so it doesn't really make any difference. Something to think about in the questions. The other disadvantage of legal controls is that it might take away your international competitive advantage. So what do I mean by that? Well, let's say that they up the minimum wage in Norway to 25 euros an hour, and then you've got a factory there. Well, you now in your factory can't make whatever you're making as cheaply as they can in another country where the minimum wage is, say, 5 euros an hour. But hang on, I've got to pay, we were making a car for the same price. Now I've got to pay all my workers this cost. Legally, I have to. Well, now the other country can make cars more cheaply than us. So creates a problem for them. The effects on the employees, well, it's great really, isn't it? Because they're designed to protect the employees. So it'll protect their rights, it'll make sure they're not paid too little, it'll make sure they can't be unfairly dismissed and they have job security, and it should make their working environment safer. Okay, now let's go back to this story. We're looking at the new people coming in. We've got Miss Moore coming in, and we're saying, well, okay, we're going to have to train these new people. Why would you train people in a business? Well, it allows the introduction of new processes and equipment. If you didn't train these teachers, AI's just exploded, favorite topic, but it's coming into education. If you don't teach your teachers about it, well, it's going to be a school that isn't at the forefront, doesn't really know how to use these things, and that could damage the school. So by training this teachers, they're going to be able to do new things and keep the business competitive. It will improve skills and productivity. If you train, even if it's not anything new, but if you train them, there might be a new way. Hey, have you thought about doing this? Even if it's an old thing that you've always done, but do it in a different way, and we can improve efficiency. We can get more made in a shorter period of time. It will also, training will boost morale and motivation. Ties in with motivational theory, see it in a later video. But yeah, I now am better at something. This means that they care about me, the employer. They've made me better, and I can actually get a better job, even if it's at a different place in the future. That will help my esteem needs. It reduces errors. If you train your teachers or you train your employees, they will make less mistakes, and errors are costly in terms of customer loyalty and just costs of making mistakes that you have to fix. So great, train them and you reduce your errors. And the other thing, it will decrease the need for supervision. If all your staff get really good, then you don't have to watch them all the time because they don't make mistakes. They're happy, they're motivated, so that saves money in the long run as well. What are the types of training? We're nearly there, it's a really long video. But with types of training, we've got 3 types, often kind of muddled together, and they shouldn't really be. The first one is on its own. Induction training. Now this is done to new members of staff. For example, I've been at my school for over a year. I can't do induction training because I've already done it. I know where the toilets are. So induction training is for new members of staff. And you could argue, in fact, that induction training, you can either do on-the-job training induction or off-the-job induction. So I think it gets a bit confusing when some things muddle it together. But induction, think new workers there only. Then we've got on-the-job training where it's trained in the workplace, at the place. We're going to explain it more. And we've got off-the-job where they send them off somewhere else. Let's go back to the example. So when we got recruited for the head teacher, when we got the new head teacher, we created a gap down below that we didn't have a geography teacher. So they had to get Mr. Kelly in externally because there was a gap as everyone shifted up. Mr. Kelly was brand new to your school. Well, therefore, he doesn't know where the toilets are. He doesn't know how to use the photocopy. So he's going to need induction training. He doesn't know the behavior sanction, those sorts of things. He will have to have induction training. The advantage of this to the school and to Mr. Kelly, well, it helps him settle in quickly. Having the first day saying, these are the toilets, this is the photocopy, these are the expectations, he's going to be able, when the children come in, he's going to be much quicker and much more effective, faster than if you just say, well, get on with it. Health and safety issues can be covered. You can check that no laws are being broken by giving him the introduction. And he's initially going to make less mistakes because you can say, hey, be careful of this, and he won't make mistakes. The disadvantages, though, is time consuming. You have to bring him in a day early and he can't be doing anything else, so it takes time. You're going to have to pay him. You can't do the training without paying. You're already paying him while he's doing the training, and it delays his start. Obvious. If he's training, then he can't be teaching the lessons. So a bit of a pain there. Then there comes on-the-job training. So at this point, I want to go back to that head teacher that's now in place, Mrs. Moore, and she says, well, you know what? My first thing, I want to get all of the staff trained up on AI. It's where education is going, and they don't seem to know about it, so I'm going to train the staff about AI. But now she's got a problem. What way is best to train the staff on AI? She can either do on-the-job training or off-the-job. Now, on-the-job training means that all of the staff stay at the school and she or someone senior in the school trains the teachers on AI. Now, what's the advantage of her doing the training, having all the teachers staying in the hall and learning from her or someone senior? Well, they learn by actively doing it. They're still in the school. You can get it alongside the normal lessons. It's cheap and you'll get specific. So it's cheap because you don't have to take them anywhere and it can be very specific. Miss Moore can say, look, this would be good for the year 7C class. You know what they're like? You can make it very specific to them. It won't disrupt normal practices and it can be immediately put into place. The disadvantages, though, is the quality depends on the trainer. If Miss Moore's not very good at AI, she could be passing on bad training. And the trainer's own work may be interrupted. Miss Moore, while she's training, she can't be doing the normal jobs of being a headmistress. And it may be that the mistakes we mentioned then get passed on to everyone. And then you've got a school of teachers who are all doing the wrong thing with AI because Miss Moore thought she knew about it, but she didn't really know about it. So there's another option. The other option is off-the-job training. That you say, right, well, I'm not going to train you in school, but actually, next Monday, there's a big conference out in America, and I'm going to fly you off to the conference. My little silly example up there. ISTE is a sort of conference about AI that you can see I was speaking at recently. So what are the advantages of that? Well, it should be delivered by experts with up-to-date equipment because that's the whole point of the event, that they are the most knowledgeable. They won't be saying things that are totally wrong at this because they'll have been vetted. It won't just be Mrs. Moore from nowhere. This should be experts in the field. So you're going to get the latest up-to-date knowledge. You can cover broad skills and the latest theory. It can improve confidence because the teachers who went there, you say, well, I know the greatest stuff because I went to the forefront, the main place in the world where they're talking about these things. However, the obvious disadvantages, it can be incredibly expensive because the new teachers, well, they're not paying themselves. And I've put up there, you can see the fees. This is $900 to go to this event. And if it was in New York, or America, you'd have to pay for their flights and their hotel. So it can be incredibly expensive to do this off-the-job training. While they're on this course, they're also, of course, not in the school. So you're going to have to pay for cover or someone else to come and do that job. So the job is not being done or it's being done expensively while they're not there. And with all of that, it may not be relevant specifically to your school. So I might be talking at this event about how you can use it with Spanish children where I teach, but actually someone's flown in from Russia and I don't know any Russian and I've not given them any useful information that is relevant to their school. That was it. Long old video. As ever, likes really help. And any questions, put them in the comments below.